Central. Now let's get you through the newspapers this morning. Share with you the big stories making headlines across Nigeria. Kicking off on the Daily Trust, and of course the big story in Kano State that everyone is talking about. The tribunal, of course, Kano Tribunal sacks Governor Yusuf and declares APC's candidate Gawuna winner. Government imposes 24-hour curfew. Business owners close shops. They, of course, have been threatened. Even in the days, leading up to the tribunal, I remember that I saw a video where one of the aides to the governor was making threats at the tribunal judges. And if you did follow yesterday, you see that the tribunal reading was read out on Zoom or via Zoom. I mean, virtually, basically. It wasn't, broadcast. It wasn't broadcast in court for the fear of protest once again. NNPP to appeal. APC applauds verdict. Also, petrol subsidy back. As federal government pays 169.4 billion naira in August.
So, wow. I have nothing to say.
Wow. Naira crashes to 970 naira at black market. IGP orders clamp down on killers of security operatives in Imo State. Ground rent, allottees besiege AGIS. FCTA rakes in over 1.9 billion in days. Ondo Assembly moves to impeach Deputy Governor, alleges misconduct. There's so many of these stories. U.S. Court orders Varsity to release Tinubu's academic records. And 5.2 trillion naira remitted to Federation account in 6 months, says the RMAFC. These are big stories, but of course, I'm going to just quickly share my thoughts on a couple of them. We're going to be having a conversation on the Kano State ruling this morning, so maybe not so much on that. But of course, the latest says rather that Abba Yusuf has been sacked as governor of the state. He has gone ahead to say that he will appeal the judgment, and we will see where that leads, and how much what his chances are at, of course, appealing that judgment. That the APC currently is or has been declared winner. Petrol subsidy back as federal government pays 169.4 billion in August. And this one will be very, very interesting to see how the Nigerian government plays this one out. What explanations they would give, what would be the stories that will be told to defend paying subsidy. Even
again, after making us suffer.
Yes, no. After saying that petrol subsidy is gone at the inauguration, and also making Nigerians pay as high as 600 naira per litre in the last 2-3 months. What will be the explanation, given to the Nigerian people as to why we are still paying subsidy? Because I remember that I said it a few times, that if you calculate well what the landing cost of petrol is in Nigeria today, you can tell that we're still going to be paying subsidy. We're still paying subsidy to some extent. So what has most likely happened is that we have only reduced the amount of money that we'll be paying as subsidy. Nigerians are bearing more of the, the cost and more of the brunt of refining petrol outside Nigeria and whatnot. But of course, this is our current reality. The petrol price, the cost of a barrel of crude oil is, currently pretty high. But of course, it's not reflected, on Nigeria's excess crude account. And at the same time, Nigerians are paying excessively for petrol. And at the same time, the exchange rate is at 970 to 980 naira currently. So it means that not very much has changed since the entry of this new government, but instead things have gotten seemingly worse for the average Nigerian. If you're exchanging the dollar at 970 to 980, there's fears that it would hit 1,000, which a lot of people would say is very likely going to happen in the next couple of days. The cost of living has gone 300 to 600 to even almost 1,000% higher than it was a couple of months ago. How is the average Nigerian coping in times like this? It's really, really tough.
I don't even know how.
Really tough. And they will feel very, very betrayed by the Nigerian government after they, of course, claimed that subsidy payments were gone. So I want to see where this leads and how this will play out. Of course, in Ondo State, Governor Akeredolu is back, and there are moves by the Assembly to impeach his Deputy Governor, Aida Tiwa. The friction there continues. Pretty much the same thing with what's going on in Edo State with Governor Obaseki and his deputy, Shaibu, going at each other. We'll see how things play out, of course, in the next couple of days. Did the Nigerian government also reduce the double exchange rates or not? Was the Naira real? Because you remember that.
Yeah, they unified the exchange rates, they floated the Naira, It's just It's just a whole lot of
it's
policies. And that's part of what he talked about at the United Nations General Assembly, which was barely 2 nights. Okay, Wednesday morning. Today's Thursday. Yes. In the early hours of yesterday morning, he talked about removing subsidy, making policies to ensure that life is better for Nigerians. And now, barely 24 hours after.
Yeah. But I mean, so I think it's, and I would always say that we lack truth. That when we start being honest with ourselves as a country, when our leaders start being honest with Nigerians as to what exactly the true situation of things are and what exactly needs to be done, maybe we'll start to fix these things. When we start being honest as to what exactly the NNPC is doing, NNPC Limited is doing for Nigeria, as we'll maybe be a little bit, more honest. When we start being honest with, cleaning up the mess in Nigeria's oil sector, we maybe would start to be able to fix these things. Until then, would continue to tell lies after lie after lie after lie.
I mean, just yesterday we talked about an 2021 oil and gas report that talked about how NNPC hasn't remitted billions of naira to the federal government in years, and yet they talk about being very transparent. So how do we draw the line?
All right, let's move away from the Daily Trust and see what's going on The Nation newspapers this morning.
All right, here on The Nation newspaper, Oluremi, my wife, friend, partner, says Tinubu, and to this I say, God, when? President Tinubu, let the single people breathe. Political cases consuming courts time, says CGN Ariwola. Planned strike, NLC keeps federal government in suspense. SGF ministers meet with VP Shetima. Labour state chapters waiting for go-ahead. Tribunal voids 165,000 NNPP votes. Sacks Kano governor. Yusuf judgment, a human error. Party heads for appeal court. It's God's will, says Ganduje. Curfew imposed on state. Shareholders accuse Amun of depleting Arik Air's, I can't see that, that's not very, Arik Air's fleet from 19 to 2. What? 19 to 2? Wow. Anyway, this is a very interesting one. Dangote refinery, we will take off with crude from NNPCL. This is yet another gray area. What does NNPCL do? What is was it last year or 2 years ago that they became a limited liability? NNPCL, I don't want to mix things up. Excuse me. But we're not quite sure about their responsibilities. There's some their duties and responsibilities aren't very clear cut.
So for me, with regards to NNPC Limited, I think the only thing that I want them to do now, what I want us to achieve at least now, is allowing independent marketers to import petrol.
And
that was the narrative that was spun as one of the ways that will crash the price of petrol in Nigeria, when we then of course open the market to independent marketers.
But they're still the sole distributors, right?
Exactly. The NNPC is still the only one who's importing petrol. So I want that to be fixed. Every other thing that I want with the NNPC Limited is just proper auditing. And I mean auditing for the last at least 50 years as to what really has gone on with the accounts and with the finances of the NNPC in the last 50 years. Yeah, every other thing, for me is irrelevant. But for now, allowing independent markets gain access to forex so that they can import, petrol, and that way we can, hopefully reduce the price of petrol, with the market forces that they continue to talk about.
All right. Let's still take 3 more stories on the front page. Ondo's House steps up moves to remove deputy governor, still on The Nation. Nigeria's solid minerals deposit worth $700 billion, says Alake, so that's something to look at. Ogun plans trial for suspected Shagamu cultist. And that's all we can take on The Nation. Let's move to The Punch newspaper.
All right, on The Punch newspapers this morning, big story there says, APC tackles Atiku as U.S. court grants ex-VP's request. The PDP and APC's aide commend U.S. court, say Tinubu's academic record will be unveiled soon. No cause for alarm. Atiku's case an exercise in futility. President has nothing to hide, says the APC. I mean, we get it, but can he at least just, bring out these records, that people are asking about? The same thing, when former President Muhammadu Buhari was actually declare his assets back then, and there was just a lot of, ula balu when it was time for him to, also provide his work result. I understand that, yes, there's nothing to hide, but then bring out the documents. It's not a big deal. So, of course, I'm sure a lot of Nigerians are waiting anxiously to see what the Chicago State University will provide with regards the Nigerian president's academic records. If he claims to have been in the 1979 set, we would like to see, of course, details and evidence that he truly was in 1979 set and graduated from Chicago State University. Because the allegations, of course, are pretty heavy. But, of course, if eventually they bring out, and this is another thing, if they eventually bring out the academic records of 1979 and it doesn't coincide with the story or with the story from the Nigerian president, what happens next? What will the Nigerian government do next? What will the courts do next? And all of that. Will he be accused of perjury? Will he be accused of other things that are election related? And the tribunal then say these are pre-election matters, and shouldn't be disturbed. I don't know, but we'll see. Lagos Road collapses after downpours. Residents groan. Strike. NLC ultimatum ends today. Federal government allays fear. And also Mohbad's wife seeks Falana's intervention. Ekiti Assembly demands justice. Naira tumbles to 980 naira to the dollar as foreign exchange shortage worsens. And we can also find here police declare 24-hour curfew as tribunal sacks Kano governor. Shops shot. NNPP supporters protest. Governor heads for appeal. We of course, we're going to be looking at that this morning. Ondo Assembly begins process to impeach deputy governor. I want to also, bring Olive in on this one. And this one is going to be on the story on Mohbad's wife. If you have been following that story online this morning, you must have heard that there are people who are claiming or making calls for a DNA test to be done, on the child of this late Nigerian artist. So let's quickly get your thoughts on that one.
I don't even understand where that came from. The whole she needs to do a DNA test. I think that's a very insensitive call to make at this time. One, because this woman is just a fresh widow. Yet again, it highlights how we're not very kind to widows in this country. How someone who's just lost her husband, and the first thing you're thinking of is how the child may not be the child of her husband. Someone who hasn't been given time to grieve.
Very true.
We need to do better for widows. And I say this as the daughter of a widow who has firsthand witnessed, not just with my mother, but with a number of other women, how they are treated unfairly when their husbands die. We don't show them a lot of empathy. We don't show them a lot of grace. And even if it wasn't a situation of a widow, common sense dictates that when someone is mourning, it's not the time to be giving them unnecessary advice. And criticism that doesn't even hold water. What is the yardstick for determining that this child is not Mohbad's child?
Social media. Looking at the child's nose and the child's face and some of it. It's actually silly.
Terrible.
It's actually silly. But here's the thing, and this is what I read. Some people were saying yesterday that my challenge really is that none of all of this has anything, in my opinion, to do with the case, and to do with his death.
Absolutely
so
nothing.
Even if you decide that you want to do a DNA test just because you feel like it, why?
A child that Mohbad accepted as his child whilst he was alive. A child that was his child, or did he not accept the child?
I mean, he did. That's not enough. That's not enough.
No. That is enough. If you are in a marriage and you have a child with your partner, and to the world, you've announced this child as your child. You never at any point came out to say, "Oh, I'm having issues. I'm not sure this child is my child." He never came out to say any of that to share. I want to believe he never came out. So why is that an issue? I don't even know.
The point I was making is, when you said he has accepted his child as his, it means that there's no need to doubt. I don't think it works like that.
Regardless, no. What I'm saying is, even and this is not in reference to Mohbad's case, in a random situation where a husband and a wife, have a child, there are many homes. And this is, I repeat again, this is not in relation to Mohbad and his child. But there are many homes where the father is not the father of the child. Very true. Right? But then they've decided to accept this child as their own. Who are you then to come out and say, oh, this person is not this person's child?
But the thing is, they are aware at least. And then they accept it.
But now, coming back to Mohbad's case, that is not the issue, first of all. And secondly, this school of thought doesn't hold water. It's very dumb and should be kicked out of the curb.
The argument really is The argument really is that, since everyone is being investigated, that, everybody should be pulled in, including the wife. But anyway, we'll see where this
And they should investigate everybody, but they should leave the woman. Allow her to grieve in peace.
Well, all right, let's move to the Daily Independent.
All right. I believe that's our final story for this morning. We'll be taking more papers tomorrow. Join us every morning from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. West African time.